everyone, this is The Record, and this is the second episode of the podcast. Today we are talking to my good friend Owen Pye, and I'd like for him to introduce himself because I'm not sure what genre he technically puts himself in these days. So Owen, if you would give yourself a little intro.
Sure. Hey, everybody. My name is Owen, as Nick so profoundly stated. I don't really know what the genre would be classified if I was actually selling records, but since I'm not, I'd say it's like indie folk music.
Okay.
So, you know, something you like to listen to while you're, looking for your other CDs.
So you merely consider yourself the elevator music of indie folk rock.
Yes,
Oh, good. That's really
good.
selling yourself high.
Yeah. Well, I
So
figured like set the bar low, so if anyone listens to it, I mean,
that's true.
really only one way to go up, and that's up. So
I think it's all about expectation these days, and as long as you undersell yourself and really make yourself sound like trash, it's only up from there. So
yeah,
people can only think highly of you.
exactly.
So I think that's a good philosophy to live by. But we'll get right into this. You and I met. I wouldn't know the date by hand, but a good long time ago in a place called Mount Vernon,
Yep.
Illinois, at I'm totally drawing a blank. What's the venue? The Living Room.
Yep.
And you were we didn't our bands didn't know each other. You were just a dude who set up a suitcase on the table and unfolded all kinds of merch out of it, and then went on stage by himself. And I remember the first little moment in my head that kind of clicked was when you covered Death Cab,
Oh,
and I
nice.
knew. And it wasn't just, hey, I'm just gonna play this Death Cab song. Like you could tell that you really put time and effort into that cover. You made it your own, and we were all really impressed. But me especially because I'm a big Death Cab fan. So I
Totally.
actually, like a month ago, I found the video I recorded of you playing that. It's on YouTube still, and I had a nice little moment remembering that. That was
Well, I
a good
keep
intro.
track I keep track of every date of a show that I've ever played, and
Oh, okay.
I can tell you it was February 24th, 2007.
Wow. Well
I don't
done,
know,
sir.
I don't know what day of the week that is, so
Well, then what's the point?
right.
Well, that's so let's see. When did you consider yourself like seriously touring, a serious musician? Because I'm curious where we met up in that timeline.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I always considered myself. I always thought I was a serious musician,
Hmm.
but then like now looking back, I guess I can put my finger on when I probably actually was serious and and I don't know how to say that, but I put out my first record in '06, and it was kind of like I was still in high school, and it was like kind of that record. And then when I met you, I was still playing some of those songs, and I still liked some of the songs off of that album, but I was kind of looking forward towards the future, and I was touring a lot when you saw me.
Yeah,
Uh,
you were. I remember looking at your dates. Like I thought we were making some serious headway, and then I saw your dates, and I was like, what is this guy doing?
yeah, I think that 2007 would be a time where I like really thought, okay, this is something I need to really hit hard and just see where it goes. And I didn't have an awesome plan as far as I didn't have like a 5-year plan
Hmm.
laid out, but I knew that this is what I wanted to be doing, and I knew I'd eventually get like a better record out. But my main goal was just playing shows and getting what I did have out there, and so I think 2007 would be a good time to say that that's when I was being really serious about it. So.
So, for those who are not familiar with you, what was the name of your first record?
The first one was called "If That's Cool with You."
If that's cool with you. And I remember when we toured, it wasn't like people were flinging their demos at us or anything, but I remember we got a hold of your album. I think we traded CDs, and then we had a pretty decent drive either that night or the following night. And I remember popping that in and being really impressed, even though it was more like a lo-fi record.
Yeah.
That kind of added something to it. It made it more genuine, and I really fell for that record. We all really liked the songs on that record, and even today, having heard you grow throughout your albums, there are some songs on that that I think are still pretty strong. They hold up today. I don't know how you feel about it, but
Well, I feel really happy hearing you say that. It means a lot to me, man. But I do try to I do think that the album had its moments where it is raw. I mean, like there's no getting around that. It's really raw. We recorded like just about every song on that record in like in one take, all live. So it was just kind of a friend of mine, John Crane. I used to play music with him, and he just had a mic in his basement. And he's kind of lazy, and so was I. So that was kind of that's what you get. But we had a lot of fun, and we did it like all in about a day. So you can definitely hear that on there. How it's very just like it sounds like that. It sounds like two guys were like, "Hey, we should just record this today," and did it. So, but I'm glad that you liked it. So hopefully, I'm not my own. Hopefully, I'm the worst critic out there is me. So
I think that's just how it goes.
yeah,
And in terms of like a timeline for a musician, I think that's how it starts is you talk to a friend who has some recording experience and then you say, well, we're free this week and let's do it. And then it starts as one takes and just straight bare bone songs. And then as you progress throughout the years, you go higher and higher production. And then I think you come back to doing those one take songs and the more amateur indie sound where it just sounds like a garage again because there's something that gets lost in the higher production albums that you miss from the old days of just going in, everyone in the same room playing and hearing the mess ups.
yeah,
So I,
yeah,
I think hearing your album was our way, a good way of showing us that just because your first album sounds a little more amateur, a little more indie in the garage, it doesn't take away from how good the songwriting is still. And I think that held true throughout that. I don't know how you feel about it, but
Jeez. Well, thanks. Well, Nick, I look up to you as a musician, so anything you say makes my heart melt a little bit.
oh boy. No, I just I think anyone who's heard that album really likes the songs on it. I think it's just that simple. The songs straight to their core are just good songwriting. So for a first album, you can definitely do worse. That's what it comes down to. But enough praises.
Yeah.
Let's take it from the beginning. Where did you come from aside from your parents? Like, how did everything start? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in a town called Highland, Illinois.
Isn't that where you currently still are?
Um, sort of. I live about 20 minutes from Highland,
Oh, okay.
but when I travel, I still tell people that I'm from Highland, and it's pretty much true, because my wife and I moved to Lebanon, which is about 20 minutes from Highland.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like we haven't bought a house yet, so until I buy a house, I still am from Highland. So,
Fair enough.
and I mean, I'm still renting, but and then when I travel like away from Illinois, where people don't know where Highland is, I usually just say St. Louis. But I guess I started playing music just in like random garage bands. I had a neighbor that played drums, and I owned a guitar. That the key word is I owned one. I didn't really know how to play it, so we just kind of got together and palled around with that for a while, and then we started like a cover band, and
Please tell me the cover band had a name.
oh yeah, I did. Oh yeah, you
And
would.
tell me you remember it.
It's so bad.
Oh,
It's so bad.
that's exactly why I'm prying. I need to hear the
Oh,
name of this band.
okay, here it is. It was called Minority Breed. Yes, it was a real band name.
I'm letting that just gain its flavors in the air. It's hanging up there, and I'm really letting it sink in.
Nick, I've never told anybody this ever.
Well, it is official. We have an exclusive on the podcast, Minority Breed album coming out this summer.
But
So,
dude, we had we convinced my parents to let us do like random shows there, and I still once in a while have a house show at my parents' house.
oh wow.
It's still big enough to do it, but we used to do like house shows there, and in junior high, you can fit a lot of little junior high kids in a basement.
Yeah, that's true.
I remember we had like
I mean, not that I know that for any reason.
uh, we still we would get like 150 kids down there, and we just loved music. And this was before everyone was into drugs and alcohol. Like not me personally, but just that was before that. Like everyone was still so innocent
Oh, okay, yeah.
and just wanted to have fun. It's like, oh, we drank 3 sodas. Uh-oh. You know.
Well,
But
back in Wakanda, that was a whole different game. We were starting real early, so by then we were already on our way out. We had gone to rehab, and we were in the sixth and seventh steps.
Lindsay Lohan's hanging out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, she learned from Wakanda's finest.
Gosh. So that I got a taste for it from there, just like how like music really does bring people together, even at an early age. And then I started playing in a band that was a little bit better, and a little bit is a very, yeah, I don't even know, but they were called the Amandas. It was like a punk rock band,
Excellent.
and we played for like 8 months or something. And then finally, the band that I used to listen to, and feel free to dub any of this out if you feel like it's pretty boring.
No, trust me, this is the stuff I like.
So then the band that I used to listen to that was the only local band that was good was a band called Cat Jump.
Okay.
Uh, and they were like kind of like blues, indie. I don't even know what you call it. The word indie wasn't even used very often
Right.
then. But they were really, really talented, and their bass player had to go to college. So they were like, hey, Owen, you want to play bass for us? I was like, yes, absolutely. So I grew up a lot from like sophomore year of high school to senior year of high school playing in that band. We toured a little bit through the summers just because we wanted to get our feet wet with it, just
Right.
to see if we'd like it. And it didn't really get past the like once 1 week tour a year kind of thing. It was just kind of like a fun part of it. But we did a couple of albums. The last one we put out was called Until the Beat Stops, and it was we did it all ourselves, and took us like 9 months to record. We used like it wasn't I can't remember the program we used. It wasn't GarageBand. It wasn't Pro Tools, but it was one of those like cheap programs. And we did it all ourselves, and we spent like 3 months on Segways and just made it. Really did a good job with it, and we were pretty proud of it. But senior year, it kind of just turned into like I could tell none of the guys really wanted to go far with it, except for maybe one of the other dudes.
Mhm.
So I just thought, hey, I kind of want to do more with this. So I left just because I wanted to see what else was out there. Um, and that's when I kind of started doing Owen Pye stuff. And that was right when MySpace was like the thing. So
Hmm.
um, I just recorded like 1 or 2 songs on my mom's computer, put it up on MySpace, and just started adding tons of people and spamming the world. And from there, like a small label out of Connecticut had called me and said that they wanted to help me out. So um, they helped me put out "If That's Cool with You," and it wasn't a super huge deal at all. It was just kind of a promotional deal. But they kind of helped me pay for some stuff and get that going. So I think from there, I thought, oh hey, music can be just more than just like your local scene.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's why I just started touring a lot and doing that. As soon as I graduated high school, I started doing it. And um, I don't know, man. Like that's kind of up to this point. I've just been touring and traveling and meeting people like you guys, and um, I don't know, like that's what keeps me going, man. Like just the face to face, like meeting people at shows, and the relationship side of it more so than the music at this point, I think. So
Well, I think that's pretty impressive that your first album got picked up by any label and that they helped even in a monetary way because I think especially when the MySpace thing was really cooking, there were a lot of people who were starting their own labels out of their garages and stuff.
yeah,
We for our first EP, I remember we recorded that and we met with a guy named Brandon, and I
yeah,
think his label was called Little Man Records or something, and he wanted to put it out, and we were just excited about, oh God, it's a label, like we're really cooking. And
yeah,
then we met this guy, and he was a complete maniac. He came to Andrews, and we were practicing, and he just stopped us at some point, and he goes, Do you mind if I just grab the mic? Just start playing like a metal song. I got to get some stuff out, and we just all kind of reluctantly. I mean, we just laughed and we're like, yeah, whatever. I mean, we're pretty free going. We'll just do this, and we start playing, and he's doing like every typical hardcore singer move in the book. He's like grinding his teeth and like swinging his arms. He's picking up change, and he's just screaming this nonsense. And I think it was at that point that we realized this is not a guy with a record label. This is just a maniac.
Right.
So to hear that you got, a label that actually was somewhat legit and wanted to help you in other ways aside from, just, oh, I'll burn some CDRs for you and hand them out at school. Like, it's kind of impressive to hear the first album out that they helped in that way. I mean, that's not that common. Usually it's a couple records in, even if it is a small label.
Yeah. Yeah. And I still to this day have never met the guy that ran everything.
Oh, okay.
I still talk to him. I still talk to him on like, like Facebook chat and stuff. He's a really good dude.
Yeah.
He's still got a few copies of that record in his garage. I've been buying them from him slowly just to kind of help him because it was kind of him just putting his own money into everything. So
Oh, okay.
I know he's not made a profit thus far from it, but who does?
Yeah, that's
He
true.
just it was more of a hobby for him, and he wanted to do it. And it was him and a couple other guys, and I met literally one guy off that label the entire time on there, and there was one other band on the label, and their name was Nickname for Richard, which I think is the most best worst band name ever, probably.
I don't know. What was the cover band called? Exactly.
Minority Breed, yeah. But I know that like none of the other bands were like really doing anything, so I think that kind of killed their aspirations, I guess. So
Yeah.
it was kind of everyone had to fly, or the whole thing wouldn't go. But who cares?
To go back a little bit,
Yeah.
are there any Cat Jump songs that are still in existence
Yeah.
that I could hear? Yeah?
Oh yeah, I'll send you a whole record that we did.
That's awesome.
Um,
I would if there's one song on there, I'd love to play this on here. Play
okay.
your favorite Cat Jump song.
Okay.
Just let me know what the name of that is, and I'll definitely play it on here.
You want me to say it when you think of it?
Yes.
Say it. Okay. This is an old Cat Jump song, and geez, I'm trying to think of what I should say here.
I mean, you don't have to have a whole set intro. Just if it's your favorite, it's your favorite.
Right, right. This is probably my favorite one. Was probably Too Hard.
Too hard. Okay.
Too Hard. Yeah.
She talks big, she talks too much, she doesn't talk at all. I keep crying and trying, but I just keep hitting the wall. There's too much pressure, too much stress, her eyes are like burning coal. Too much pain, too much to gain from the loving both are. So I guess I take it too hard. I guess I take it too hard. I take it hard when we're together, hard when we're apart.
So after you do If That's Cool With You,
Okay.
then you just hit the road real heavy. At what point, like in the midst of all that, do you start going like, what's the next step? How do you start figuring out the next steps while you're just in the middle of it, just hitting the road hard?
Right. Well, a lot of the life decisions that had happened kind of affected what I was doing. Basically, I toured until I met my wife, and she wasn't my wife when I met her, but
Your
we
wonderful wife, Jillian.
yes, she is wonderful. Her name is Jillian, and she's cool. But we started dating, and I was still touring at this point, but we got engaged like 6 months after we started dating.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah, we just kind of knew that there was like we knew what we were both signing up for, for the most part. So we're like, let's do this, And we got engaged, and then 9 months later, we were married. So it was crazy. So we had planned to kind of just be married for a little while, and then get back on the road and start going again. But then, like 4 months into being married, we found out we were a couple months pregnant. We're like,
Man, fast
so
movers, you two. The
we didn't
pies.
we didn't mess around. Um, Somewhere in here where like I was just having like a full time job and supporting my wife, and at this time I was actually meeting with a couple other guys um, playing music, and they started playing Owen Pye stuff with me, and we did a whole record together. And that was the Owen Pye and the Sunday School Band record.
Right.
And then that album's actually really I'm really proud of that one. That one turned out really well. And then Jillian and I hung out, and after Cash got my son, then after he was born, we kind of chilled out for like another, I don't even know how long. But last year, 2011, February is when my newest record came out, and we just felt like late 2010 that I was going to put in my notice at my job and just say, hey, we've waited long enough. We're going back out. So this past year, February, I quit my job. And mind you, this is the first time I quit my job with a wife and a kid, you know.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, here, this is real, you know. So I quit my job, and then we toured for like 3 or 4 months, pretty solid. But I had this like idea in my mind that I could be traveling and booking at the same time. Which you know that's a really difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
And then also, I didn't figure in that I'm also a dad and a husband now. Like when I'm not playing a show and I'm not driving in the car, I really need to, put some time in with those, in those two areas of my life. So that became really hard. So long story short, the shows started out really well, and then they slowly kind of week by week got worse and worse.
Really?
Yeah. The first couple months, like I was able to pay all our bills and no problems there. And the last couple months, it was just kind of like, oh, this is really hard. So I also do like I'm involved in some like Christian music somewhat. And I got the pleasure to play at this camp last June. That was the last thing on our schedule, this like week-long camp. And I got to play in front of these kids for, 5 days or whatever. That was fun. So I got home from that, and Davey, bass singer, he sang for a band called Bleach. Nick, you actually met him at Agape last year.
Yes, I did.
He filled in on drums. But he's kind of a role model for me. He wrote a song that I cover at my shows, and we kind of became friends through that because he'd heard about me covering his music, and he checked out my music. So anywho, he called me, and he was like, hey, man, what would you think about, working with us on our label? And I was like, okay. So I was kind of like at that point last June, I was like, I'm just kind of a crossroads for me. I need to either figure out a different way to do this or, figure out a different way to do this. Basically, I signed with their label. They've been awesome so far. And right now I'm just working on a new record to get back out there, man. That's kind of where I'm at right now. It's kind of up to this point. Did I explain that very well?
Yes, you did. I'm probably going to jump back a little bit, but I think it's something that goes unnoticed, but not only the musician in a serious relationship, but the touring musician who's married, and on top of that as a kid, like being on the road just by yourself and keeping yourself sane, that's tough as it is.
For sure.
And then you're adding these other layers to it where it's not about just making enough money to feed yourself that night. You've got bills, you've got priorities back home you got to take care of. So
right.
How do you deal, man? I have I have a lot of respect for any musician who has a family and is trying to tour and is trying to make it, because like I said, it's tough enough as it is without all that. Then you add those layers and
right.
It just gets nuts.
Well, I mean, like the thing was like when I toured by myself, I know how you are the same way. It's like, we'll sleep on the floor. We don't care.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you have a kid, it's like, you can't make your kid sleep on the floor. You can't make your wife sleep on the floor. There's something, I don't know, just makes you feel wrong doing that. So like, just like, being really purposeful when like planning shows and like really trying to get like the back end of everything figured out. Like, okay, where are we staying?
Yeah.
It, hotels, as much as they are nice, like they're still not really optimal for me because even with a family, like the relational part of like getting to know people and letting people host us is like a huge part of it.
Right.
So I never want to lose that part of it, but just like being like, okay, I really need to check these people out before we stay with them because they may try to kill me and my kid, But you and I both know like those crazy people are like you can count them on one hand usually.
Yeah.
Most people out there really do care about the bands and the musicians that come through. But I mean, it just put it all in perspective. It's like, all right, I can be a professional musician, and do this right, or I can be a little kid and just be a hobby like everybody else. So,
Mm-hmm.
and honestly, man, I think it just helps you put it all in perspective and like just put it in gear and do it. It's just, and when you know it's not just about you, because if it's just about you, then it's like whatever, you can go
Yeah.
skip a meal or two.
Mm-hmm.
If you know that you have that responsibility, it is a good motivator. So
Seems like it helps you grow up
yeah,
real fast in all kinds of assets.
yeah, yeah. So now I'm just trying to grow up as a musician as well, like write better songs all the time. That's the hard part.
Well, I feel like that's just a bed of opportunity talking about dealing with all that growth and how to keep yourself intact while raising a family. I feel like there's so many emotional struggles in there that's like 4 albums alone just dealing with that, let alone the people you meet along the way and the issues you deal with as you grow older.
Yeah.
So it's always interesting me. There's really only you and Marky from the Felix Culpa were the two that I always think about, like I'd be complaining or thinking about missing my girlfriend on the road, and then I was like, well, we're not even married and we don't even have kids. Like this, I'm gonna stop complaining. Like,
But I don't want to make little of that. It's still it's still real to have a girlfriend back home. Like that's still huge. Like missing that. And dude, I'm not trying to belittle that at all. So
no, I'm just saying that when you think you've got it hard, just put it in perspective, because there's people who, they're not just trying to make enough money to eat Denny's. They got a family back home. They have money. They have to actually make a certain amount. It's like you said, it's not like you can just skip a meal or throw your wife on the floor to sleep that night. Like there's
Right.
there's a certain level you got to meet.
right.
So I've always had a respect for that. The musician in a marriage with a family, it seems like a whole lot to deal with. So my hat's off to you, sir. But
man.
you have a very supportive family, it seems, so that probably helps out a lot more than many other situations out there.
Oh yeah, man. Like, I mean, I hear more and more every day about bands. Their girlfriend or their spouse like making them choose like me or the band, and like I know my wife would never do that.
Yeah.
Like she knows what she signed up for from day one, and just kind of a disclaimer out there for anyone that's in a relationship like that. And in music, it's like define the relationship way before that happens, so you're not having to. And I don't think I'd ever want my spouse, hypothetically, to choose me over their passion.
Yeah.
That just seems so like, why can't you have both?
Right.
Um, and I know that music is not always going to look exactly the same as it does today, as it will 10 years from now. It's always going to be changing for everybody that's involved with it. So, I don't know. So,
Well, my hat's off to you, family man. And speaking of your family, so
Yeah.
you said you have a son. His name is Cash. How old is he?
he just turned 3 in July.
Wow. And what's it like to be a dad, man?
But it's crazy, man. Like, I'm just, I don't know. I gotta like really think about what I say around him. where where I could say anything around my wife or my friends, and like goofing off or serious. But now I'm like, I have to like really think about what I'm saying. Or the other day he borrowed my computer. He's like, Dad, let me get on your computer. I'm like, okay. and he's like typing away. He like I just opened like text edit form. He's just like typing away. I'm like, hey, what are you doing? He goes, hold on a second, Dad. I'm busy. He told me that, and I had to like think about it, like, all right, he's mimicking me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like it just makes you go, okay, all right, maybe I should really check myself with like everything that I do. It's like
Yeah.
you don't want to be too busy for your kid because you're checking Facebook or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's awesome. He's a great dude. He loves music. He loves people. You know,
So he's all about it.
he's all about it. Yeah, he
That's great.
but the older he gets, he does realize how loud the music is. So
Right. Yeah.
he's starting to be more like, oh, Dad, turn that down. When he was
He's
like,
gone from being 2 years old to being 60 in a year. It's just turn it down.
so he's freaking cool though, man. Like, he, yeah, yeah. What about this dog I keep hearing make noises?
I was waiting to see how long it would take for you to notice that you can hear a creature in the background scurrying about. There's a Boston Terrier just kind of running around, chewing on things, barking at nothing, and uh, you know, destroying our room as she pleases. She's not very good for podcasting, but Jen's not here, so she's just kind of bouncing around in here with me. So don't mind that.
No, I think it's kind of fun because you're in the middle of saying something really serious. I heard a little like right in the middle of right in the break of your talk. Like that's gonna be hard to edit out. So please,
No, there's hardly any editing in here. We're keeping it in. This is amateur to the max.
good. Thank you.
Keeping it real, keeping it indie. It's my first record out here, and just going in and recording live and just keeping what I got.
Or as I like to say, keeping it rural.
Oh, well, you are from the St. Louis area, so keeping it real with Nelly and his gang.
Oh yeah, he got caught for marijuana and heroin a couple hours ago apparently.
Wow.
So
See, we're right on the ball here. So this is all, you think this is all just from the top of the head, but this is all planned. We're
yeah.
rolling right into the next topics.
How many hard drugs have you taken?
The thing about that is, we're thinking of breaking up. No, we can get into me. We'll just keep this going. I have never taken any drug. I've never smoked anything. Never know any drugs. No cigarettes. Just booze, but very sparingly as compared to many other touring musicians.
I don't want to use this word incorrectly, but would you be considered some level of straight edge because of that?
I never knew anyone who was straight edge, so I think that's something you kind of announce and you write big X's on your hand and you make it a big ordeal. Like, I never shunned people for doing it, and I just had my own reasons for not doing it, but I never consider myself any of that because any of the people I met or knew people who were straight edge just they seemed like jerks. Like
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
they were very self-aware. They made you know that, hey, I'm straight edge. It's like I was just eating. Like I didn't even talk about that at all. It just seemed like it was never anything beside that. That's all they were. So it was just my own choice, and I didn't shun anyone else for doing that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think there's a lot of assumptions that come with musicians, especially those on the road, and that's one of them. They're getting into drugs. They're fooling around. What other stereotypes have you come across, or have people thought of you as a musician on the road?
Right. Would you
No,
just
I'm
say that
I'm
again?
asking you.
You tagged a question right there at the end. I was about to ask you a question. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. It's got to be different for you. A lot of people who come across you kind of know what you're about and know that you're not really a sketchy guy. But have you talked to anyone who doesn't know your music and say like, yeah, I'm a tour musician? They're like, oh, I've heard of your kind.
Yeah.
Has anyone thrown any stereotypes your way or assumed anything about?
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is always the assumption with just about everybody that I meet that doesn't quite know, which, ignorance is bliss, I guess, but like
Yeah.
people that assume that music is like kind of like the plan B. It's like, oh, I couldn't become an astronaut, so I guess I'll just play music for a living, you know. And I think that's a big misconception for people. It's like the cop out. Um,
Really?
yeah, I mean, for a lot of people that I've talked to, like
Oh, okay.
they don't really take it as like a serious thing. And
Oh, well, that's true. I see
not
what you're
people in
saying.
the music industry, but like people like when you go home and like someone asks you, "What do you do?" and it's like, "I play music," and it's like they don't really know what that means,
Right.
and they don't really have an aspiration to know. They just kind of have their preconceived notions and just kind of hold on to that. So
Yeah, there is a silliness that seems to come with it. Like they think you're a kid in your room just, playing guitar and like, oh, that's cute. You play music. So what
yeah,
else do you? Like, no, that's what I do. Nothing else.
yeah,
But
or it's
I've
or it's
always
like
been amused by the stereotypes and the assumptions that come with announcing yourself as a musician or a touring musician.
right, right, and then the obvious assumption is that you're homeless too.
Well, that's not far off. That's you literally are homeless. I didn't. I think in 2 or 3 years of touring, maybe like 4 or 5 years of touring, we stayed in a hotel twice or three times. I think we essentially were homeless. If people viewed or knew how we slept in our circumstances, I mean, not different than anyone else, but
Yeah,
I think if you put the description of a homeless person next to a tour musician, there'd be more than several crossovers. There'd be plenty of things that are in common.
right, right. I guess, but you're making a sacrifice to get something done, and that's the difference. Like if you got done with the tour and you just lived on the street, literally on the
Right.
street for weeks, then it'd be like, okay, yeah, musicianship is your plan B.
Hmm.
But if it's like, no, this is my passion, and some things you have to adjust parts of your life to make this work. That's it's different.
Yeah, that's true. So after all this interrupting, going back and forth, we just keep sailing on as this is a very professional podcast, as you can tell. Um, so you were talking about you got into bands in high school. You started in a cover band. Do you remember the first album that kind of got you thinking I'd like to seriously pursue music, or
Of
the
my
first song?
of my music or of the
No,
okay.
an album you heard, friend showed you something, or you heard something on the radio, something that clicked where you're like, I kind of want to give this a go.
Oh man, I mean, there's a lot of bands. I mean, I grew up like going to coffee shops and stuff like that, just to like watch bands. I think it's just seeing other bands that are close to me, and honestly, like my favorite band in the world, like just local guys
Hmm.
getting up there and playing and be like, oh, this is awesome. Like in just the community that comes along with it. I mean, like, man, I want to be a part of this community, and I mean, obviously there are some bands out there that I loved going to watch, on tour. I loved seeing Sufjan Stevens play live. I got to see him one time, and that changed my life a little bit.
Wow.
And then also there's a lot of good bands out there that I always watch come through, like Deus Fail. They used to come through town a lot, and they were phenomenal. Still are a phenomenal band, and just like realizing that, especially now, with radio being the way it is, like if you have a talent like and you're remotely good and you have a passion, I mean, you can be just as successful as the next guy out there. So what's stopping you other than the passion behind it? So um, did I answer that correctly? Or did I?
Yes, it did. Do you remember the first show you went to?
The first show?
Yeah,
No, I don't.
because I don't remember the first show I went. Actually, I'll take that back. The first show I went to was Genesis with my parents.
Oh, that's legit. That's pretty legit.
My fam rolled deep in Phil Collins knowledge, so that's
Um,
just how that started.
all like my parents, all they let us listen to growing up was mainly Christian music.
Okay.
So I know one of the first bands I saw was like DC Talk, and which if you don't know who they are, you've been blessed. They had some fun songs, but it's just like that subculture that they try to trap you in,
Yeah.
and they didn't really like going to music. I think, but then this sounds weird, but the only band I listened to from 8th grade through like, no, like 7th grade through like freshman year was Metallica.
That is awesome.
That's literally all I. My MSN screen name was Sandman 2K6, which is the year.
Well, I
Yeah,
was gonna ask what your album was, but now I can just go with the Black Album.
actually, I just my favorite album wasn't the Black Album. My favorite album um, was probably And Justice for All.
Okay,
But
deep cuts.
yeah,
So when are you gonna sit Cash down and put on Injustice for All and say, "No, this is music"?
I'm, I don't know, man. I'll give him a little while. I mean,
Wait till he turns 4 when he gets mature.
new Metallica like Saint Anger on, that all
Oh, God.
sucks. They have like a
Actually, I
go.
don't know what the name of the album is called. Is it Battery or something? The very last album they did, I've heard songs off of it that I guess since I heard Saint Anger made me think, well, this isn't terrible. But that isn't to say that it's anything from like the old albums.
Yeah. Well, okay. Let me rephrase. I listened to Saint Anger and I hated it so bad.
Right.
I was like, I'm never gonna. They're done.
Yeah.
So I've never listened to anything past Saint Anger. So I guess
Yeah.
I am a little bit ignorant. So you're gonna be
Well,
getting a lot of angry emails, including Metallica and straight edge stuff.
well, I'm really trying to just weed all the people, the potential listeners. I'm trying to really get this into a subgenre so small that it ends up being just me and the people I interview. So it's a really select audience, and I'm gonna try to push the people I'm interviewing as well. I don't want them to listen to this either. Just me, really.
Right. It's like if you went to the record store to find this podcast, it'd be like other.
Right? Yeah.
It's like, great. You'll never find it.
Well, that if someone asked me what I thought Owen Pye's first big album that he listened to a lot, I would never guess Injustice for All or anything in the genre of metal or heavy music. So I'm learning something new tonight about you.
That's literally all I listen to. But in my password had something to do with Metallica, and
Naturally.
one of my best friends growing up, he came up to me like a year ago. I saw him, and he goes, "Is your password still?" And he named off the Metallica reference, and I was like, "Yeah, man, it's still that." So you guys listening could probably crack my
That's
passwords
awesome.
out there, but
So how do you go from listening to Injustice for All and not getting into a metal band? How does that not work? Because I feel like the first albums you listen to are the bands that you get into, and that's the music that you essentially create is from the first things you're listening to.
right. There were a couple guys that I tried to play with, just for fun to see if it would work, and there was one actual group that was pretty good, and the drummer was kind of metal, and the guitar player was kind of metal, and I went to one, maybe two practices of theirs, and the second practice, they were all doing whippets, so I was like, I'm gonna get out of this. So I didn't. I
You
didn't.
weren't metal enough.
I was
with
like,
it.
and I didn't really know what it was in the moment. I was like, what are they doing? And I finally figured it out. And so that was like my main experience with like going down the metal path. And I'm not saying that everyone involved with metal's like that, but I think that was just like me going, I'll stay back here.
It wasn't seeing behind the music and looking at the old Metallica videos of them just like getting wasted and doing hardcore drugs. It was 3 kids in a garage doing whippets. That's what strayed you from the path. I can only imagine had you seen the behind the music what you would have thought.
So I don't know, man. And I mean, I still like metal. I still listen to like the newer stuff. I'm not a metalhead anymore though, man. It's like
Yeah.
it's all pretty chill music now, but I still,
What do you make of actually the first podcast I did? We talked a little bit about metal, and I brought up a question, and I said, "Why do you think metal always has this devout fan base, no matter how good the band is?" Like it seemed like anytime we went to, there was a metal band I'd never heard of, and they draw 4 times as many people as us, and they were just garbage.
man, I don't know what that is. I think it's just like I don't know. I mean, you can get away with it because it's
Yeah.
like even if it's bad, it's like you can always turn it up. and you can feel it.
That's true. And a lot of that music is feel. It's just being there and being intense and just kind of getting your angers out from the week.
Yeah, yeah,
So maybe that is. It's essentially yoga for 50-year-old women. It's just metal for prepubescent teens.
but I don't know. Maybe you can agree with me on this. Like the guys that were in the metal bands were always like the sweetest dudes.
Yeah.
I don't. Maybe maybe there's something there. Like they got all their angst out, while they were playing, and it's us indie guys like that were just. Well, even I mean, I hate to throw this in your face, but to me, Doctor Manhattan had a little bit of metal undertones in it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
and
were
not in
big Cannibal Corpse fans, so.
yeah, not in a bad way. Not in a bad way.
No, no, no. I don't take that as an offense. I still listen to metal. Just today, I was listening to Misery Signals and some other metal bands that I like. So, I mean, there's a place for it. I don't hate on all of it. There's still good
Yeah.
hardcore and metal bands up there. There just always seemed to be this thing where every bill there was a metal band and there was always people there to watch them. So I was just wondered if like metal had this kind of underlying X Factor thing where it's like, no matter how good the show is, it's still metal, so I'll still go see it.
Yep. Yep.
But we just totally veered off of something you were talking about before, listening to metal. But is there what do you make of metal today? Because a lot of it is pretty generic sounding. It's not a lot of it's being repeated. I mean that's every genre, but I think the stereotype is like Rise Records,
Yeah.
like the metal bands on there, which is unfortunate because there are good bands on Rise, but
Yeah.
there seems to be like a sound that kind of comes with that. Are there bands, any metal bands that you get into that you still like, or newer bands that have kind of stopped you in your tracks?
Yeah. I guess I don't want to mislead anyone into thinking that I have a professional or a credible opinion on metal these days.
I think everyone has a credible opinion on metal these days.
When I did pop on I turned on the radio a couple of times and I'd flip over to like the harder station and they'd play a quote metal song and it was like I can't handle like I know I'm gonna get some flack for this. Someone listening's not gonna like this, but the Avenged Sevenfold band,
Yeah.
I can't do it, man. It's just like
Yeah.
it's complete. The stuff that you like in that music, it's just a copy of old Metallica records.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I know it's just my opinion, but
Well,
I guess I like more harder music than I do metal anymore. Some of those
For
bands that I
example.
liked are like Under Oath
Okay, yeah.
and a band called As Cities Burn.
Oh, we can get into that.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not really metal. I wouldn't call it metal, but I don't know. For me, that it's metal now.
Yeah.
It's like harder. It's like the hardest stuff I listen to now.
So you must be pretty excited about Under Oath's last tour. Have you seen this lineup?
Oh my gosh, Me Without You, and
And As Cities Burn.
yeah, it's ridiculous.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's good.
Speaking of As Cities Burn, I go back and forth because I have friends who are big metalheads, and they really love their first album.
Yep.
Was that Son, I Loved You at Your Darkest?
Yeah, yeah,
And I wasn't introduced to that album. The first album I heard was Come Now Sleep.
yep.
And not knowing they were a metal band, I heard that album and was just blown away. Like that could be a top 10 album for me even today, right now.
Yeah,
So then I went back because I had friends go, "Oh, you have to hear the first album," and it didn't do anything for me because, hearing the second album, it just kind of set a different precedent.
yep.
Being a fan of the band, what's your opinion on that?
Dude, that's classic because I first heard him on the first album.
Yeah,
I loved it, and then I heard Come Now Sleep, and I love that too. So I guess I
it feels like that could have been a really polarizing album for a lot of people
yeah.
because it's completely different.
Oh, totally. But it is great because obviously there was a member change there, and that had a lot to do with it. I went and saw him play during that album when it came out, and it was awesome. They were really good, but it was a bummer because they only played like 20 minutes because they were opening for some stupid metal band. It was like
Uh,
Alisana or something.
oh boy.
Yeah, they're opening for them, which is just that's all backwards. But what?
Yeah.
Uh, but man, I thought that album was awesome too. It was just different.
Yeah.
So I think I got blessed with hearing it in the right order
Yeah.
because I
I
think it's
think.
better if
Oh,
you go
sorry.
that way. I was just thinking it's better if you start up thinking, oh, this is a harder band, and then listen to like the new stuff and go, oh, this isn't all they can do.
Yeah. I
So,
think I have to go back and listen to that first album again because, like I said, I do like metal. I just think I loved Come Now Sleep so much that hearing that album, something about it wasn't the same. It was like, because it was backwards that I heard Come Now Sleep, and that sounded like that was the band to me. So then hearing the first album, it's like, oh, they just added a guy who screams now. Like it seemed like they sold out, like it was in reverse to me. But
yeah, yeah,
but yeah, that album and the album after that, Hell or High Water, is a strong album as well.
yep,
But Come Now Sleep is, yeah, it's a top tenner for me.
yeah.
Any other strong, while we're talking about top 10 kind of albums, not necessarily anything that's like shaped your well, you could say that, but like you don't need to name Sufjan Stevens or bands like yourself.
Right.
Any albums that are in your top 10 that you can think of?
Man, I know this sounds weird, and like I was talking earlier about the guy that I covered his song, and then he's actually runs the record label that I'm on now. But
Right.
his old band, they're called Bleach,
Yeah.
and the album's called Again for the First Time, and it's one of those albums that people don't really, they just kind of glance over because it was marketed as a quote Christian music record,
Mm-hmm.
but it's so much more than that. It's so freaking good. It's still one of those albums I can listen to from beginning to end and go, oh my gosh, it's so good. Um, I don't know what it is, man. There's not a lot of songs in CDs like that, but that CD start to finish, I'm telling anyone listening, get it. If you don't like it, I'll send you I'll PayPal you $5.
Wow, that's a strong endorsement.
Right, right.
I'm sure Davey loves to hear that from you.
He doesn't care. He'd probably be embarrassed if I said anything about that. But they played at this festival. They did a 10-year reunion show
Yeah.
of that record, and they played it in its entirety. And man, it just pulled my heartstrings the whole time. It was so perfect because they don't play together anymore. But
Right.
so it was surreal that it was even happening in front of my face. But but yeah, that record, Illinois by Sufjan's my top 10.
That's a good one as well.
Oh yeah. And Jillian, actually, my wife, just bought us tickets to go see him in Chattanooga.
What a good wife.
All the tickets are sold out, man. But it's just $20. I was like,
Wow.
we're making a road trip.
That sounds like a road trip.
If you,
Going back on what you were just talking about, actually, it seems like in the past couple of years, a lot of bands have been doing their reunion tours, and we're going to tour this old album, and we're going to get back together and do 10 years this album has been around. And I'm not sure if it's, a lot of people speculate that all these bands are broke and they're just trying to make a coin, but I think it's so much more than that. Especially, I mean, you can't tell that to someone who's a fan of Bleach that they're all just broke and they're looking to make a quick dime. It's like that album meant a lot to a lot of people. So you gather all those people in a room and you start that first note on that album. It's like you're transported back to middle school or whenever you heard that album. Such a meaningful experience. So I think while there is the little issue of like, why do I have to pay $40 to see this band or $30? It's like, you're paying $30 to talk to your inner self, to meet with that child inside and hang out for 40 minutes.
Yep. Dude.
So I think it's cool that there's a lot of that going on. I was just saying the other day that I don't think I've paid for as many concerts in the last year than I have my whole life, because there's been so many good bands coming through.
Shoot, I mean, now Further Seems Forever's coming out.
Yeah.
Come on. The list just keeps going on and on. I mean, part of me is like, okay, that's enough. But
Yeah.
but the other part of me is like, no, this has to happen. And I
Right.
wonder, I don't know what it is. Maybe something's in the water, but it seems like everybody agreed is like, hey, this would be a good idea if we
Yeah.
did this again. And I'm sure there are a couple out there where it is, because of money,
Yeah.
they're trying to relive it for a moment, but I don't know. I have a hard time believing that there isn't another purpose for it. I think we're starting to see. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like when I was in high school, people went to shows. When I got out of high school, people kind of slowly stopped going to shows,
Mm-hmm.
and now I think slowly they're starting to go to shows again.
Yeah.
So I think we're
I'd
seeing the
agree.
pendulum swing back again,
Yeah.
and maybe these bands coming out is going to give it a little jump start to that. So who knows?
I think it's exciting time to be in a band while a lot of people just crap on the music industry and say, it's in a tailspin and there's a lot to deal with and consider. But I mean, you're seeing a lot of bands come through. Like, I'm kicking myself because Lagwagon just came through Chicago and they never come.
Yeah.
And I didn't go. And I'm just immediately regretting it because it's like it could be another 10 years if they ever come again. So
Oh yeah.
seems like a lot of bands are starting to pull in the reins and like get back on the road and do things again. So it's kind of exciting to see, like especially bands you listened to in high school that maybe if you would have gone in high school you wouldn't have cared as much, and now you're older and you're going, you're like soaking it up even more.
Yeah. Like we appreciate it so much more. Maybe,
Yeah.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe it has something to do with the Mayan calendar.
You know, I just had a conversation with my dad the other day, and it amazes me that people still really think that's going to happen. And I'm not gonna poo-poo on anyone who really thinks that. Everyone's entitled to their own beliefs, but I don't know, man.
I lo-
It just seems like every 3 months there's been another reason to be scared. And I used to have like a huge fear of Armageddon when I was in middle school, and like it was coming to the year 2000. I remember I was like crippling fear, and then that came and passed, and then like every 6 months there's been a theory of something happening, and it's just I'm like too tired of hearing it. I'm like, if it happens it happens, but
I
at
mean,
this point I'm just too tired of being worried about it.
right. And I think our generation that lived through the Y2K is just
Yeah.
kind of over it. It's like, come on. We're listening to
Yeah.
Prince. Like, this is it. And, and nope, didn't happen. Okay. My
Yeah.
computer still works.
But Prince is touring, so I don't know if that's saying anything. Maybe the end of the world is coming.
He was warning us.
Yeah. We have to all party like it's 1999 because the world is about to end. Something I wanted to get into with you.
Yeah.
We're coming close to an hour, so I'm not going to hold you for much longer. But something that interests me, there's like two topics I want to talk to you about. And
Sure.
one was being a touring musician with a family,
Yeah.
that balance. And the other is being a singer who is based in Christianity and having religion be a big part of your music.
Right.
What hurdles, like what issues do you deal with having that be a prevalent part of your music? Because I think a lot of people hear, oh, you're a Christian singer, like I don't want your theories, I don't want your issues jammed down my throat.
Right.
And so I'm just curious what your take is on that, like what do you have to deal with in that world?
Right. Well, like honestly, man, it's a weird thing being the kind of musician that I am because it's like um they call it CCM, like contemporary Christian music, and I wouldn't consider myself a CCM artist, but I wouldn't say that I don't write Christian music ever. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like I'm like the guy that plays in churches and plays in bars, and like
Yeah.
I don't really see the difference as far as like there's a desire to play in both for me.
Hmm.
Um, I guess like my songs just come from my life, so it's like obviously being a Christian is a huge part of that, and like my faith has a huge part of that. But when I write a song, it's like I don't write it to like push an agenda on anybody.
Yeah.
I just write it because like, okay, I'm dealing with this right now, and this is what I'm learning through this, or this is like, you know, um, this is something I read in my Bible, or this is a conversation that I had with a friend of mine, or this is a sermon I heard, and then like I take it just kind of all wraps into a song, and it's like, okay, this is the life lesson that I'm learning here, or this is what I think I'm supposed to be learning here, or just telling a story about what happened to me. I mean, there's not really anything to prove or disprove there. It's just like, hey, this is what happened to me once. And I mean, anybody would agree that, Christian or not, like you can't deny something that happened to someone's personal experience. Same thing, I wouldn't, if someone told me their story, I wouldn't be like, now hold on a second. Don't
Yeah.
prove this to me. That'll never be like my thing. I'll never be like trying to push my agenda on anybody. Um, First and foremost, like music, I think is the common denominator,
Yeah.
and that's like what brings people out to shows. Like me being a Christian doesn't bring people out to shows, and me not being a Christian doesn't bring people out to shows. Like the music brings people out to shows,
Yeah.
and like for that moment, like my only goal is to like play a good song for somebody, and then when I get off the stage, my only goal is to become friends with that person, and like if they some point in life, that talk comes where it's like, hey, why'd you write the song? Like I'll answer the question, and I'll try to be candid where I'm supposed to be, or like be to the point. So I guess for me it's just like, I'm a sinner. Everybody's a sinner, and like just like dealing with that sin and like growing from it, and just writing a song about it. Did I answer that correctly?
There is no right or wrong when you're talking to me.
I know.
I just, I think, like you said, the common denominator, common denominator is music, and you know what you're talking about. Good music, good music's good music,
Yeah.
and I think that really connected with me when I heard "Come Now Sleep" because
Hmm.
they're talking about really heavy issues, and I've always been fascinated with religion and philosophy, and that album especially was a big one for me musically and lyrically, just hearing that struggle and go
Yeah.
through that regardless of how I feel about it. A good story is a good story,
Oh,
and
dude.
that's why that album really holds strong to me, because regardless of what I think about religion, like that's a good story.
Yeah. Man, there's a song on Sufjan's record called John Wayne Gacy Jr.
Okay.
And have you heard that song?
I don't think so.
I mean, it's so phenomenal. Like I wouldn't ever most people wouldn't look at that song and say this is a Christian song,
Hmm.
and for the right reasons. But like this song's about John Wayne Gacy Jr. The guy that was a serial killer, molested tons of boys, chopped them up, put them underneath his floorboards. It's a pretty crazy story.
Yeah.
And so he sings this whole song, and you're expecting him to be like, "Yeah, that's sicko," or sing this song. But the last lyric is, "And in my best behavior, I'm really just like him. Look beneath the floorboards for the secrets that I've hid." And I'm like, every time I hear that lyric, I get freaking chills down my freaking spine, because it's like
That's heavy.
he just brings into perspective. It's like, that's what being a Christian is. It's like this sin isn't worse than this sin. It's like it's all the same. It's all
Yeah.
separation, and how it's kind of just levels everyone out. Like, hey, we're all messed up, and we need we need someone bigger than ourselves to help us out of this. So like
Yeah.
for me, like Sufjan didn't. He wrote an awesome song, had an awesome story, and then he had something to throw on there. Christian or not, makes you think and go, oh wow, like I judge everyone by my own like thoughts, and it's just good, man.
Yeah.
And so I guess for my like that song is like to me like a huge goal of like, okay, every song I write needs to be like that one, where it's not necessarily always a Christian meaning, but just it makes everyone think, Christian or not, are they in a good place right now? But
Yeah.
it's a freaking good song. Like if the song sucked, it's like who cares what he has to say?
Right.
If you man, you got to go listen to that song, give you freaking chills.
I'll
So
have to listen to that record again because I definitely have it, and I don't know why, but the mix that I have is so incredibly loud when I'm listening in headphones, like in the shuffle. One of those songs will come on, and it just deafens me, and then I immediately skip the song because I'm just like, oh, all right. Like I don't even care to hear what the song is because I don't know why it's so loud. But I think if as long as I can EQ that a little bit, I can enjoy that album and give it an honest listen.
I love just how old we are getting as musicians. Like, it's
Well,
too
just
loud.
thinking Sufjan Stevens being too loud, like I'm sure that's good enough for a laugh right there. That any album like that could be too loud, but for some reason it's just like cranked so loud over every other album I have. I don't get it, but yeah, I just like I said, I'm just fascinated with being a musician who has strong beliefs and not necessarily having to defend those or when you're on stage. I think for what I remember, you aren't very preachy. You're not trying to tell people what to believe in. Like you're very respectful about that. But there are other bands who go on stage and they ask to pray and with everyone, and like it's a much bigger show, and
Yeah.
not that one's better than the other, but I think I respect someone who's not really kind of getting into that with me, because that's just like someone go on stage and starting to talk about any topic they're super passionate about and jamming it down your throat, like just like we're here to enjoy some music. Don't
Right.
get on your agenda. And like you said, your music doesn't have an agenda. It's maybe what you're going through has to do with your religion or your any issues you may have, but that has nothing to do with how you're influencing your listeners. Like
Right.
you
Right.
have different experiences, whether you know they're from whatever in your life.
Right. And man,
So
like
I think that's cool.
I've been in the at the shows too where I hear the bands start out like that, and
Yeah.
not the bash bands like that, because I do feel like sometimes like in churches and stuff there is a place for that,
Yeah.
but for me I'm like, it seems like a cop out. Like it seems like, especially, I want to say this like without hurting any feelings, but I'm like, some bands I feel like they don't have a deep message.
Yeah.
So they have to just lay out this like statement to where if you don't agree with them and don't like it, then you're automatically like an anti-Christian or
Yeah.
or anti the church. So like someone out there that might not even really own that, they're gonna sit there and be like, "Oh, this band's awesome," because they're hardcore. But I'm like,
Right.
if it's the same thing with like Death Cab's like one of my favorite bands, but I remember like them getting up there one time and like going on about how horrible Bush was, and I was like, really? Like, I don't like Bush either, but I'm like, is that really the place for it, or is it?
Yeah.
Can they just write a song and play it for us?
Yeah.
And if you have like a really strong conviction and like, hey, I want to tell you guys something that happened or about this song, that's one thing. But it's like getting out there and be like, Planned Parenthood sucks. Here's our song, and like that's just such a bolt. Like it's a cop out. It's like
Here's a song about lemonade. Has nothing to do with that. I'm just yelling opinions.
right. So it just I feel like the bands sell themselves short sometimes when they just come out with the black and white, and then people don't even want to hear the gray because it's already tainted. They're already hearing that black and white every song. There's never even, in any argument or debate, you don't start out with saying, Nick, you're wrong about this, and here's why. Like, who starts a conversation like that?
Right.
Like, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You have no respect for the people. And I'm not saying like if you're playing at church, pray, and you're playing, worship songs. Like, I get it. You're praying and like whatever, but and like I guess I've been to too many Christian festivals where like that like it's like every other band. It's like, oh, they prayed. They're probably gonna sell more merch than I did. And
Yeah.
that sounds bad, but like that's like what's going through my head, and I'm like,
Well,
I don't think Jesus.
it seems like a marketing thing sometimes where you have to establish what you're about because you're on stage and that helps sell records. And then
Yeah,
especially at a festival like that, not to say that other bands at other festivals don't play that same game in other ways.
yeah,
I just remember playing Agape Fest with you. That was my first time going to a Christian music fest, and kind of experiencing that. And it was good because I got both sides of it. I got to, no, in a totally honest way, I
Yeah.
got to play with musicians who have strong Christian beliefs or believe otherwise from me,
Yeah.
and they were very cool and didn't shove it down my throat or even talk about it. And and I'm not uncomfortable talking about it. I
Yeah.
can, I like talking about philosophy and religion, but other experiences I've had are people who are strong Christians, like that's all they have in their life, that's all they have to talk about, and that I just have no business talking to that person
Right.
because there's so many other things I want to get into. But that festival, I saw both sides of it. I hung out with the guys in your band who were very cool, and we just talked about whatever. And then there was people it seemed like they were in other bands, and yeah, they went on stage and they were praying, and they were after every song thanking Jesus. And you know it's not to say that that's corny or that's it's a lie, because if that's what you believe, I mean, who am I to say that you're wrong to do that? But
Right.
like you were saying, it's like at some point it's like, you can go on stage and play music and people can still be all about that without you having to preface it with what you believe in. I
Right.
mean, but again, that was a Christian music festival.
Yeah.
It's a whole other ball game, and that was my first time going to one, so I was just kind of absorbing everything around me, and it was really interesting.
I read somewhere. Have you ever seen the movie Saved with Macaulay Culkin?
A long time ago, and I didn't see the whole thing, so we'll just say no for
Well,
safety.
I mean, basically the premise of the movie is like they take like the corniest moments of Christianity and put it into a movie, and it's obviously probably supposed to be an insult, but for actual Christians, it's just kind of like, oh, this is a wake up call. Like we need to be able to accept what people think about that.
Yeah.
And I think Macaulay Culkin went to like Cornerstone or one of the Christian festivals, like to kind of research his role, kind of thing before he's in the movie. And I guess everyone just from his presence just assumed that he was a Christian and like asked him to get up and like talk and all this
Oh
stuff.
wow.
And it was like kind of like that just that right there was like, oh, you can't come to this festival unless you're like a diehard Christian. It's like
Yeah.
you don't want to lose anybody. You don't want people to not come because they're not Christians. You don't want people to come just because they're Christians, because then it's like this holy huddle where it's like you can play really bad music here, but as long as you say it's
Yeah.
Jesus, it's okay. I don't think that's good. I think we need to be, God is a creator, and He created the world, and the world's awesome. Like we like the world, So it's if that's true, then like we also need to strive to be creative. So we don't want to get up there and do a finger painting and it's like really bad and be like, this is the best,
Right.
because I'm a Christian or whatever. So yeah, hopefully I'm not pushing my agenda too much where I'm like jaded towards the Christian music industry, because that's not the case. But I'm just trying
Well,
to honesty here.
yeah, I think it's a good point, because as I'm kind of thinking about what you're saying, festivals today are very diverse. It's not so much a hip hop festival and an indie band festival and a metal festival. They're all just combining.
Yeah.
And Warped Tour used to be all punk, but now there's hip hop and there's metal and there's folk bands. So to me, just hearing this is a Christian music festival, it has this connotation that's like, well, why separate yourself? That
Yeah.
kind of gives it this bad taste in my mouth. Like, if this band played at Warped Tour and I saw them and I didn't know they were a Christian band, that wouldn't change my opinion. I'd like their music if they're good. But
Yeah.
yeah, to hear Christian music festival, if you're not religious or you don't really have any beliefs in that, you're probably not going to go to that festival, because there's just too many negative connotations that come with Christian music festival. Do you run into that sort of thing where you play a festival like that, and I'm sure it's just as fulfilling, but at the same time it's like, had we called this something else, we could have got 10,000 more people to come to this? Or
Yeah. Yeah.
do
It's-
you deal with not only just festivals, but being a singer who is considered like a Christian folk singer? Do you think that comes with a stigma?
Oh yeah, it totally does. Like it's tough, as I was saying, like to get those shows too. Like you'll try to get a show at a church, and a church will see like the bar on your venue list, and it's like, oh, this guy seems kind of weird. Maybe we won't book him. And then you try to play the bar, and they see like the church on your list, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, this guy kind of seems kind of weird. We won't book him. So it's that tough that. But you know what? It's what I signed up for because I want to be involved in both. I don't want to be like, I'm never gonna play this or that. And I do know a couple of quote Christian artists that kind of basically have laid it out as a band like they won't play churches because they don't want to be labeled that stigma because they are so much more than just a quote Christian band.
Yeah.
It's the same thing for like any band out there. They don't want to be just labeled as like, oh, they're the pro-life band. Like who wants that? Like, you want to be a good band, and you write songs that change people's lives for better or for worse. That's what your goal is, man. So hopefully that I think these festivals like Warped Tour are like melting together. I think it's a good thing. I think we need to, as Christians, learn something from it. And
well, I think both sides, because I mean, the worst examples of any group ruin it for any other group.
Mm-hmm.
You see a documentary like Jesus Camp, and if you think that every Christian is like that, then there's no way you're going to a Christian music festival.
Right.
But then again, there's crazy right wingers, there's crazy left wingers. Like, if you're only seeing the extremes, then you're not going to hang out with anyone.
Right.
So those people are putting a bad taste in everyone's mouth. So I think just integrating Christian bands or bands, even if they're religious, that don't talk about it, putting them at festivals that don't say they're Christian music festival, just having them play as another band like any other band there.
Right.
I think that is progress and not segregating it, because it just, I don't know anyone, I mean, that just in my world, that if I said, hey, let's all go to a Christian music festival, that I'd have a full car to go to it. Like, and I think that's sad, because there are really great bands that are Christian bands, and you probably know plethoras of artists I've never heard of that are great, but the one I always go to is As Cities Burn, and I'm sure that they don't go out and preach. I've never seen them live, but I'd imagine a band like that, maybe they do, but bands that are successful aren't preachy bands. But what do I know? Because there are those, what's that band, Third Day or whatever? Those huge Christian bands that I'm sure that's all they're about, and they're raking in millions. So what do I know?
Right.
What is a band like that, or what's the other one? Is there a Christian band called the Newsboys?
Oh yeah.
I had like one experience with that band, and I used to live in a townhouse with my mom, and I got locked out, so I went to the neighbors to hang out, actually just to use their bathroom. But I had nowhere to go for like 3 hours, and they were a super Christian family. So they didn't even have like a color TV. Like, I mean, that has nothing to do with that. There was just like, they were like cavemen to me. I was like, what are you doing? And I think they put on the Newsboys, and they're like, oh, you like music? You're in a band? And they put that on. I was like, yeah. But I remember
awesome.
We were talking about that band Third Day, because one of their records, the artwork looks just like a Radiohead album.
Just like a Radiohead album.
Do you know?
I know exactly
I can't think
what
of
you're talking about.
What's the Radiohead album?
Is it
I'm drawing a blank. Hail to the Thief.
Yeah, that's it.
And I remember when I worked at Barnes & Noble, I didn't know who Third Day was or what kind of band they were, and looking through the music, I pulled that album and I was like, what? This is... And then I like went to the Radiohead album, and I just looked at them, and I was like, how is this not a thing? How is this not an issue?
Yeah, I don't know how that happened and how no one caught that, or if they did, how they tucked it away so well, because but I guess they just figured that no one would ever put the two together because they're in two different worlds,
Right.
But we figured it out, Nick.
We're at the bottom of it.
So I think whatever industry you're in, Christian or non, like just striving to be a good songwriter, like
Yeah.
that's always gonna be the answer, you know. Because if you're not a good songwriter, you might as well. It doesn't matter what you call yourself. It's irrelevant after 30 minutes. So
That's true, man. And I think that's a good note to end on. I have one more question. I ended the last podcast with this, and
Okay.
I'll see if I can keep this going for how long. Maybe I'll just drop off after this one. But
okay.
what do you imagine being on your tombstone? What are your famous words to live by, or whether the tombstones have, in the future, there's pictures or videos, what would yours have on it?
Man, this is a tough question.
Yeah, that's what Mike said. He's like, I think this is your toughest question the whole time. Like, oh, good. I think I should start from here and work forward.
That's a good question. I guess I want my name on there, Owen Pye.
Yeah.
And then
I hope you can hear my dog snoring in the background.
the dog snore. That's how boring this is. Putting a dog to sleep.
He's not big into religion. Well, she rather. So, I mean, there's nothing that's interesting. She doesn't even like music. She's useless.
I don't know, man. That's a tough question.
Yeah.
My wife just walked in. Jillian, help me out. Give me something funny to say.
Jillian, come say hi on this podcast.
Come say hi on this podcast.
How's it going, Nick?
How are you, Jillian?
I'm wonderful.
Say hi to everybody, not just Nick.
Oh, hi, everybody.
Well, it's just me right now, so we'll see where it goes. Jillian, what's it like to be married to a musician? What are the pros and cons?
Ooh, that's a whole can of worms, Nick.
That's a whole other podcast. I'm going to get you, and we're going to get real into it.
Just give him one worm.
I was just talking the other day that I need to write an article to warn both sides of the equation.
Yeah.
What it means to get into that type of relationship.
I think that'd be an interesting article.
Yeah, I think it would be good. I think it'd have some funny stuff in it and also
Absolutely.
some important things, But I think on your tombstone, babe, it should say, I didn't do it. I think that's funny.
What are you, Urkel?
What? Did you see?
Urkel from Family Matters.
I do that.
Yeah, Urkel's Did I Do That?
That's better.
Oh, well, I failed. Well played.
Jillian brought it to the plate, and Nikki.
Yeah, she crushed it. She comes for 1 minute and just destroys it. Well done, miss.
Awesome.
Well, it was good to say hi to you, Jillian, and thanks for talking to me, Owen. I appreciate the hour and 20 you spared.
Dude, it was a
I'm gonna
blast.
let you go back to being a good husband and a dad out there.
Oh, absolutely, man. Thanks for talking to me. I forgot. I completely lost track of time, so don't worry about it.
Well, good. That's either good or terrible. on
In a
my
good
end.
way. In a good way.
Well, perfect. Well, thanks a lot, man, again. And let's try to do this again when I'm a little more experienced and I've got a little more structure to this whole thing instead of a bumbling conversation over the phone.
Okay. I like it this way, though, so don't change too much.
Okay, good.
I'll sing low, so even the deaf might hear a song they can sing, even when no one is listening. But everyone that matters is listening. The only one that matters is listening. I'm not listening. I'm not listening. I can't even know my name unless you name me. And I can't even see. You're the light into my feet. And how did I miss you in my sleep? Kicking around in the dark. When all the while you hold a match, and I pray for just a spark that would set this city ablaze. And as for me, I just burn away, set this city on fire tonight. I'll play soft for all of the hardened hearts that don't even care about themselves. They're bitter towards their mothers, and bitter towards each other and everyone. They're pulling others to the level until they're done, but they're still alone. They're still alone. I'm still alone. I'm still alone. And I can't even know my name unless you name me. And I can't even see. You're the light into my feet. How did I miss you in my sleep, kicking around in the dark? All the while you hold a match, and I pray for just a spark that would set this city ablaze. And as for me, I just burn away, set this city on fire tonight. You're the sunset setting. You're the sunlight that I'm dreaming. You're the sun.